Welcome back to the X Podcast, where I am back again and again with Zachary and Gregory.
That's my name.
Would you pass me that AI 2041 book by Kai-Fu Lan Win? No, it is Kai-Fu Lee.
Kai-Fu Lee.
Okay, I wish we had said this last time. This book, in an age where a lot of people try to cash in and are opportunists and may not know what they're talking about, worked for what? Google?
Microsoft, Apple. So some of the scenarios we talked about last episode were kind of written by him. And he's a guy who's not only worked for these companies, as well as his co-writer Chen Kuifan. He was a Google engineer as well. So not only has he worked for these companies, but he's actually been in the field of AI for the last 30 plus years.
And you said he came out with a book in 2010?
He wrote a book. I don't remember the exact date. It was right around 2010, 2012, like in that called AI Superpowers.
Okay.
That had some predictions for where AI would be where we're at right now. A lot of them have largely come true. And so I think he has a way to look ahead into the future for where AI technology is going, where we're going to be. And so he makes 10 predictions. The subtitle is 10 visions for our future. He makes 10 predictions for how AI is going to be integrated into our society as we go into the future, that as you read it, you can very easily see how these things could become integrated into our society.
All right, so if you're interested, pick up Kai-Fu Lee's book, AI 2041, 10 Visions for Our Future.
And they also do a fantastic job in that book, that's why I like it, of breaking down the base technologies that are behind what they're talking about. So it does a really good job for like the average user that maybe has never really dug into AI. It does a great job explaining the scenario of what they're talking about, of what this future could be. But then they really go into kind of a deep dive about these are the technologies behind that. These are what the opportunities are with them, that kind of thing. So it's pretty cool. I really like how the book is written. That's a good one.
Nice. All right, so let's talk some more AI. First of all, Gregory, are you on Threads?
I am.
Are you really?
I
am. Both of you.
Love Threads.
You're on Threads. Okay. We discussed
Anything that knocks Twitter out, I'm good. Or sorry, X.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm kind of anti.
Are you an Elon Musk fan, Gregory?
I'm anti-Elon
You're
Musk.
anti. I know you are, Zachary.
He's kind of outrageous. And super overrated.
I want to especially because I know you and Pastor Tim love Elon.
You
love Elon. I want to like Elon and some of the things he stands for and what he wants to do. But as it plays out, it's just hard for me to get there.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle. I was a devil's advocate for him before his takeover of Twitter. Now it's a little bit harder to, that's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
And now he's ripped off our church and is rebranding it X.
Come on.
What are you going to do with that?
I don't even understand that from a branding perspective. Like, Twitter was a fantastic brand. Everyone knew the bird.
Billions of dollars of advertising.
To be honest, what it feels like is this. We've had other conversations about this. We won't talk too long about Elon, but it's like someone who's a genius found his genius became his Achilles heel in a sector that he didn't know a whole lot about and did a horrible job. His genius did not translate, and it feels like instead of addressing the root issues of how he is just destroyed Twitter, it feels like he keeps trying to find different Band-Aids. Well, let me find this weird way to incentivize celebrities that's actually going to end up taking them off. Let's rebrand. It's like you are painting over, what's the phrase? You're trying to paint a pig.
Lipstick on a pig.
You're trying to put lipstick on a pig instead of take the tumor out. It does not matter how many times you rebrand it. You've got to figure out what it is in you that's destroyed it.
My question for you is he really a genius? Or has he just made really good and timely investments in companies at times when they were at a critical turning point?
No, he's absolutely a genius.
I disagree.
He is single-handedly paved the way for EV.
Why?
He has... Okay, I can agree.
Have you built a rocket?
I have not built a rocket, but he bought the company that built a rocket. He didn't build the rocket himself. If you go back, he bought the company.
Okay, but he is an engineer. He is actually in the mix with the creation of these underground tunnels, with the creation of EV, with the creation of the rockets.
That underground tunnel was kind of a scam.
How's that a scam?
You have to jump in a Tesla to take it back and forth, and that's all it does. It goes between an event center and back.
Okay, but it's easy to throw stones at pioneers and who are
He's
trying
not
to
a
create the
pioneer.
future. He's not a pioneer.
Okay, he maybe is a pioneer.
Okay.
He's a pioneer on EVs and on the rocket space stuff, but that's all I'm getting at.
Okay,
Get out of here.
I would
Let's
love
move
somebody.
on. That's not even the point of
I would love
this.
somebody to attack me one day and be like, Russ is not a genius. I mean, yeah. Did he create the entire future of the way transportation occurs? Sure. Did he single-handedly change the way humanity has a paradigm shift? Sure,
Even
but that's
then,
about it.
Let's talk about, okay, fine. On EVs, this goes along with our conversation. He insists on only using computer or vision technology through cameras to interpret what's going on the road when we have far superior technologies to understand what's going on the road.
Okay, you taking a peripheral issue that you disagree with does not invalidate his genius.
I'm trying to
he's
circle
done.
back to our conversation.
No, he is a genius.
No,
is
he's
he
not.
a mad? You cannot, whether you like him or hate him, you cannot deny he's a genius. He may be a mad genius. His genius did not translate to Twitter for sure, and he has made, in my opinion, a jerk of himself in the process. But he's a genius.
Sure.
All right, let's pivot.
That was very fun for me.
Let's pivot. Okay. All right. So AI 2041. We're back. We're caffeinated. And we're going to talk about, well, first off, you would briefly, before we go into some other topics, you had mentioned several of the ways that, in the 10 visions of Kai-Fu Lee, in 2041 of what AI will do. And one of the things was education. But you were saying offline about how basically, I guess they've already started this in China, the whole idea of education will be, instead of being handed a Chromebook, you'll be handed a bot.
Correct.
And even, what was the Abraham Lincoln example?
So, for example, they're using large language models like ChatGPT to train bots. They're feeding it, for example, speeches from a famous historical figure, all of its written works by a certain historical figure, and the images, information about the time period in which that historical figure lived, to create a simulation of how that person would talk and interact with you if they were alive today. So, for example, students of the future will be able to have a conversation with a bot about who is trained to respond like Abraham Lincoln about the Civil War, issues that were going on during the Civil War, and what was happening with our country and why he was making the decisions that he made. So, in a sense, our future students will be able to live history by interactions with a bot. There already is this happening in China. China's
That
already
is
taking advantage of this technology.
Both fascinating and highly creepy.
You see
Okay.
now, I read recently an article about there's an online influencer who used ChatGPT to create basically a bot version of herself that then she sold access to, through subscription fees
I did hear
to
about
the
this.
service for men to basically have a online version of herself as their girlfriend.
I did hear about this.
That's one of the doomsday scenarios for me because
Yeah.
we already live in a world that's like searching for someone to acknowledge them. And so a bot that's trained, especially if you got like a really good one that's really trained to find what it is that makes you tick and then continues to play on that, you could live out a whole world with this bot that's not even real.
Yeah,
That's scary.
yeah.
Talk about wasted
Choose
pu-
your future for fantasy.
So that
Yeah.
Falsehood.
that technology already is happening today.
If you
imagine
had-
in 20 years.
If you had a historical bot to talk to, who would it be?
Oh, this is a fascinating question.
George
Yeah.
Washington.
Would it be Helen Keller so we can prove that she's real?
Oh my gosh.
Not Helen Keller.
Okay.
Immediately my mind goes to football and Reggie
Oh.
White or Vince Lombardi.
Oh, this immediately became disappointing. Greg?
George Washington.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
And or would you be Jesus,
Why,
Pastor
wait,
Russ?
why
I feel
would you?
Leonardo da Vinci. Okay,
Oh,
for real.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
is
would,
that really what you would do?
Michelangelo,
Go
some
and
of the
talk
originals
to a
would-
football player? That's what you, honest to God, like of the all the history of the world. I've drank too much Diet Coke for this episode. For the history of the world, all the theologians, all the inventors.
for
all
those
the,
of you who are watching online right now, just know this: that sometimes it's fun to get Pastor Russ going a little bit.
you would pick a football player
and I love this reaction.
to just from the 80s just to have a conversation with over coffee. That's what you would do.
I think it'd be fun to go to different moments throughout history. So like to talk to like a Julius Caesar.
Okay.
Talk to growing up I was fascinated by ancient history. So talk to Julius Caesar, go back and talk to a pharaoh, go back and talk to
And then Deion Sanders is what you're telling me.
Deion Sanders would actually be a lot of fun. Coach Prime. But
Okay.
Who would yours
Who
be?
would you talk
You don't
to?
get to ask us and pick on us and then not
Okay.
answer.
I mean, let's Einstein, Da Vinci,
Oppenheimer.
Bruce Lee. Oppenheimer would be fascinating. That would be like my top 10. I mean,
Bruce Lee.
the Apostle Paul, Elijah, Saint Augustine, Aristotle.
Are you intentionally avoiding Jesus or?
I already know him.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Okay. Humble brag.
Yeah.
Well, no,
Humble brag there.
no, obviously, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many. That's a great question. What about you,
I already said George Washington.
George Washington? Okay.
It'd be fun.
What about George Washington Carver?
Yeah, he would be cool.
fascinating.
There's
Anyways.
a lot of like individual people in history I think would be cool.
Yes, there would be.
There's so much application, I think, in education is
Yes.
our point through all this.
Okay,
There's so much
so let's talk something encouraging. This is supposed to be,
A fun one.
it's at times we bring our faith into this doomsday. So let's talk doomsday. What are the ways that everybody is freaking out that the world could end through AI? First off, Greg, just open-ended question. Or no, let me just say it this way: yes or no? Are you encouraged by the future of AI?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there any part of you that is concerned about the future of AI?
No.
Not at all?
I wouldn't say not at all. I think that again, there needs to be some logically set boundaries. But where those boundaries lie, it all depends on the application. There's so many different AI technologies. Like when we're talking about transportation, there's a lot of good that's going to come from AI transportation or smart, intelligent driving, whatever. That, when you think about it, if no one is actually driving on the roads, speed's going to be far faster, which I'm all for. And there's going to be far fewer collisions.
Wait, why would nobody be driving on the road?
Because eventually, theoretically, all cars will be driving themselves.
How would you get somewhere? Teleportation?
You get in a car and it just takes you somewhere.
Oh, I thought you were just saying okay, I see what you're saying.
You're going to call up Uber,
Yeah.
but Uber's going to show up with no one in the driver's seat, and you just hop in the car,
Yeah.
and it takes you where you want to go.
Or even you own your own and it's just like the Tesla model.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, I guess we got to thank Elon for all this.
yeah.
Let's
First
say,
terrible.
okay, so
Quick side note, too.
Yes.
Can I answer the same question?
Yeah.
So before I knew we were going to
Are
do
you
this
encouraged?
podcast, yes.
okay,
Before I started preparing for this podcast, I was actually more afraid of the future of AI. I think when ChatGPT came out, I was like, oh, this is really cool, and I love it, and this is going to be awesome. And then I kind of got scared as like a lot of sensationalized news things. I remember like reading like, oh, is an AI bot going to take over the world, different things like that. But as I've been reading this, I've become more excited for what the future of technology and humanity is going to look like. I absolutely think that AI is going to be an incredible tool that can be used to help humans. Now, like any technology and any tool, it can be used for either good or it can be used for incredible evil, and there can be a lot of consequences. So a lot of it is going to be determined by how well we're prepared to interact and engage with this technology. That'll determine kind of its overall future. But
yeah, I mean, I
its
guess
potential is exciting.
when you think about the danger, I mean, I guess in my mind goes to three categories: the unintended consequences. What are the ramifications? What's the abuse and misuse, and then what's the just straight out evil, use of it? You're grimacing. Why?
I just don't see a lot of evil uses of it. Right
Really?
now.
Have you met humanity? Have you
I
seen
have.
history? What?
In fact, on that note, there was a really interesting, at one point they gave an AI bot the ability to go on Twitter and understand language from reading tweets, Within less than a day, the thing was spouting some of the most profane and terrible things that it could ever say. And so basically everyone learned that you don't train bots on Twitter data.
Okay.
That's just a fun little fact.
But that is a fun. But you don't think an evil dictator? I mean, we have the history of the world would tell us that an evil ruler is going to find whatever technology is at their disposal to do their evil.
I think that's true, but I also think that some of the most evil ones don't have the access to technology that they.
You don't think they would do that? You don't think? I mean, look
at what kind of AI technology are you talking about here? Are you talking about like an AI soldier, so to say, an automated soldier?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of layers to it. Yeah, I mean, soldiers could be weapons.
I'm far more concerned as a developer for the security part of it. So
talking about y'all were talking about
that's a doomsday environment that you could get into. Yeah, deep fakes. But I'm more interested in so last year there was a big hack that happened with Kronos clocks. Kronos is a system that you use for clocking in and out of work. A lot of hospitals use it. They were down for almost a month. People couldn't clock into work. Employees weren't getting paid. It was right around W-2 time, so W-2s weren't going out for employees. That's a massive issue. And a lot of people lost a lot of data that they needed to make sure that their employees were getting paid properly. Kronos took a whole month to recover from that. So more so in my space, and this is something that my company has leaned heavily into, is how do we make sure as a country that we are protected from those kinds of hacks, and as a company or at a publicly owned companies that are dealing with that kind of sensitive data, how are we making sure that those companies have plans for recovering from such a thing?
Yeah,
that's more so where I'm concerned is the hacking abilities of the future. As we lean as a society more into technology, there's more susceptible places we didn't even plan for.
I think back to the original question, for me, AI as a technology is inherently probably neutral.
Sure.
Yeah. So like anything, it can be used both for good and for evil. So this is, okay, let's talk about this. Here's a doomsday scenario. We talked about in the last episode how data is the new currency, how companies, governments, different entities are going to be wanting access to data. And as you give these things access to data, it'll provide benefits through AI technology that will improve your life. But what's going to happen, for example, if a whole country, through either coercion or governmental law or whatever it is forced to give up their data to, let's say, one company or to one individual or one governmental party or that sort of thing. A doomsday scenario could then be what that one entity could then do with a whole group of people because they have the ability to influence or control said group of people. That's a very realistic concern with the future of AI. AI itself, isn't necessarily the problem. Although I will say that AI potentially makes it easier or more accessible at a large scale to influence culture than maybe any other tool we've had before.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's one area that I am worried about, it's the misinformation that we were talking about. So ChatGPT, for example, there's news sites that are using ChatGPT to write their entire, everything on their website is ChatGPT driven. And so if bad information gets put in there, either by human interaction or let's say that you have a, foul person in the company that allows that to exist, then that could be proliferated out to sites that then are spreading bad information. We have the deep fakes. And so in 2022 and I think August, there was the leader of Ukraine came out with a video saying that he was retreating and that, they were going to let Russia take over. It was a deep fake. He never actually said it.
So crazy.
That's more so. And then I spoke to you about the hacker that was arrested in Mexican prisons for meddling in Mexican elections. And so they were using Twitter actually to change trends on the internet, therefore changing how people perceive different political opponents and change their vote. And they actually were able to track and see that if we push these stories that paint this person as a bad character, they all of a sudden fell off the ballot pretty quickly.
Wow.
And he went as far as saying, when asked, if you think that this happens in other countries, specifically America, he said you would be basically an idiot if you did not believe that it was happening in your own country.
So crazy. Do you think, kind of going back a little bit, when you're talking about like, with your company and them, the concern is how do we make sure we're not, ever. I mean, to me, again, this is just like my uneducated mindset going into it. The deeper technology develops, the deeper that hackers are going to develop. So to me, it would be naive to think that you could ever get any technology so advanced to where a hacker couldn't hack it. Because of that, do you feel like there's going to be a pendulum swing a little bit back and forth for a while eventually, where it's kind of like, okay, everybody goes towards automation? And I almost think about, like, you ever meet an old timer? Like, you ever meet somebody that's so old school that they won't put their money in the bank? Like, I don't trust it. And so they like have it in their closet or like hidden in a hole somewhere. Do you feel like there may be a pendulum swing eventually in the future where people are like, oh, I just can't trust, we have no idea? Because that is a scary thought to think that if you automate accountants' works, if you automate payroll, if you automate all those things,
We'll go back
if you
to the
don't have any
autonomous driving. We automate driving. What happens if someone hacks it and all of a sudden everyone's on the highway driving to work in the morning and car stops driving, but they continue moving? What happens?
Yeah.
You're talking about a mass, possibly casualty, or they accelerate everyone's car to 150 miles an hour and they're all slamming into each other.
I mean,
I think that you certainly will see people make a choice to get off the internet. I mean, you already see people like
off grid
or whatever. I think that trend.
But then still post about it on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. I think that trend will continue to grow, and that will always be a part of our culture. But I think that the benefits of this technology are going to continue to probably outweigh some of those inherent risks with that technology. That I think it'll be hard. People will be hard pressed to say no to the advantages that participating in this technology will bring you compared to some of those risks. Now, I do think what you will see, we're talking about doomsday scenarios here, let's say with the deep fakes, I think you're going to see other companies work on creating technology that are like deep fake detectors that will be also AI trained, and that will also be like trained to like spot the differences between the two. And there'll be when we talk about wars of the future, wars might not necessarily be hot wars, but there'll be proprietary wars between companies or between nations on creating technology that helps determine is that ad that you see or that thing that you see on Twitter, is that a Russian deepfake designed to influence political elections, or is that an actual just something that one person created on their own, just because they don't like a certain party or not. So you're going to see technologies kind of going back and forth. And I think eventually while there will always be new technologies that are created that will be, that will evade those technologies, an equilibrium will be established between those things, and such that there is balance.
I think it will take leadership. So I think there definitely is a responsibility of individual companies to make sure that you're doing the best to protect your data and what all of that. But there also is going to need to be guidance from the government eventually. I think that's where we kind of fall short in some areas in our government. We don't have a lot of the people that sit on the boards in our government or committees in our government that oversee the internet kind of things and the policies around that.
So you're saying high federal regulation?
I am saying that for the betterment of the people, it is possible that the government might need to set some standards for companies to follow. I'm not saying that they need to control it. I'm saying that they need to set policies. That's what we're seeing, and I'm not trying to get into a political conversation on this, but that's where you're seeing, like I mentioned last time, the cookies that pop up at the bottom of every website now. The European nations are taking it very serious. They're putting a lot of people on committees that are professionals in those fields to make educated policies around it. We're lacking that in the U.S. right now, and I think that's a big area we probably need to grow to protect from potential doomsday situations.
So we talked about doomsday number one, a government or an entity, a corporation, kind of gets control of everyone's data and then can influence or manipulate. We talked about deep fakes. What are some other potential doomsday scenarios?
I mean, let's go back to, is it iRobot? Are there going to be million standing robot soldier armies?
I don't
invading?
think so.
No?
I mean, it's very possible that another country comes out with that. From what I've read so far, when it comes to at least the U.S., and obviously they could have a fully functioning one and we don't have any idea. But based on what I have read, the government is leery of using technology in that way because of the amount of individual little things that a soldier would have to analyze before pulling the trigger to shoot someone. And so, therefore, do we really trust that a bot's going to be able to look through a camera, analyze everything that's going on, and make that decision?
Yeah.
And then what also are the legalities of using an AI technology to do that same thing? So,
yeah. That is murky.
Yeah, I think military technology, we're talking about that. You talked about soldiers. What happens if AI is put in charge of the red button, for example? Or not even that. Here's another doomsday scenario. An AI is tasked with overseeing the cleaning up of, let's say, an environmental problem. Climate change is clearly on the rise. It's the hottest summer ever that we've experienced this year, on the heels of last summer being the hottest summer ever. So,
are you saying there's global warming?
I'm saying there's global warming. We can debate about that if you want to, but I'm saying there's global warming happening. Something's happening. Can't deny that. Anyways, let's say an AI is tasked with helping clean up an area. Let's say it could be of our oceans or part of our
an oil spill.
Spill, something like that. With the parameters that the AI is given to help ensure that that's cleaned up, it could potentially interpret that as, well, this happened because, for example, the humans in this town caused this oil spill to happen. And so the AI could begin to produce resources, digital attacks, hacks into things to displace or move that group of people away from that area, because even though its original goal was to do a good thing, it could interpret some of that data or something the wrong way.
Now that would make a fun movie.
I think there is potential for that kind of thing eventually, but I don't think that we're at that point yet.
No, but that is something that could happen.
A lot of these bots are made with very specific intent.
Yes.
And very specific, and there has to be, in the development world, you would have to set your guardrails very intentionally.
But don't they, in the very essence of how AI is developed, isn't there a continual growing of, not sentience, but a continual growing of the more inputs they receive, the more they adjust and evolve?
To some point, yeah. When you talk about deep learning, that's where I was talking about earlier, the neural networks that it builds. Some of them can be so complex that we're talking about they build tens, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of individual neurons that are firing off and saying, I received this, I fire this off to this neuron now that takes that and analyzes that. And so that's all built on its own, essentially. So yeah, they do get smarter to some extent, but it still is going to depend on how good the data is you feed it. And so the question with some of this is then, where is it getting its data from? How's it programmed? What's it programmed to do? There's a lot of nuance inside of that conversation that we would really have. And then what's its resources that it actually is able to tap back into then? ChatGPT 4, for example. So right now, most people are running on 3. They released 3.5 to companies as a beta, and then 4 is what they're working on. 4 you can pay to have access to. It started pretty broad, and there was people literally able to get it to go out and hire people on the internet for it to do things. They've already guardrailed it a lot of that and said, okay, no longer is ChatGPT 4 able to reach out to the greater internet for you. Like I said, we're going to have to be smart in the future about what we do with these technologies, what we're able to give them access to. From a political standpoint, we probably need to set some guardrails that companies need to try and stay inside of. But I don't know. I don't think the world's going to burn from this, if that's what you're asking.
It does make for a fascinating movie, though. I mean,
did either of you see Oppenheimer?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Come on, guys.
Planning too soon.
Okay.
I was saying earlier that the first human killed by an AI will be the news shot heard around the world, so to say.
No, that
And
will
then
be.
also the person that created it, are they going to go the full flip like Oppenheimer of like, we need to do everything we can to stop this now. Anyways.
But AI is so different though, because it's not like, I mean, creating an atomic bomb is like a clear line of demarcation. AI is not. It's already here.
It's already here.
Yeah, but let's talk about a scientist or an engineer who was in charge of the project to build the first AI soldier, but it was supposed to be only sent out on peacekeeping missions.
Peacekeepers. What movie is this from?
Hunger Games.
Oh.
They were called Peacekeepers.
Oh, that's right.
Were
Okay.
they?
Did you see they're coming out with the new one?
Yes.
There's a trailer for a new Hunger Games.
Yeah, based off of, I think it's like the salad of song, or salad.
The
Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is the name of the book.
The Salads of Songbirds.
The
It is
ballad-
riveting.
Yeah, of Songbirds and Snakes. Anyways,
Chicken Caesar.
chicken Caesar salad.
Okay.
It's going to be interesting if that doomsday scenario would ever come to fruition for me. I think there's a lot of things that have to happen. Although I will say this. You talk about unintended consequences. I do think there's probably a lot of unintended consequences with AI that we're going to have to grapple with throughout the next 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, like my mind, honestly, like I'm playing devil's advocate and just letting y'all riff. My bigger concerns when it comes to AI are not the doomsday scenario. My bigger concerns are
Human level.
all the unintended consequences of digital media that have happened when it comes to human interaction, when it's human mental health, all those things. I just wonder when the word we use, human flourishing, like there's going to be a lot of practical flourishing and benefits, but on a soul level, on a relational level, on a mental health level, on a
So this
Oh, go ahead.
this leads to like kind of the last doomsday scenario that is interesting. So I think when everyone thinks about AI, the first thing you think about is sentient AI beings that take over the world. Think Matrix. Okay. Have you ever heard of the Turing test? Turing. The Turing test. That is the official test, scientific test, that determines if an AI has, at least according to the scientific community, that determines if an AI has reached human sentience. And all the test basically is between a human and a machine through literal text conversation. So there's a text conversation back and forth, and it requires a third-party observer watching that interaction, and then it's that third-party observer being able to watch the two having a conversation back and forth. And if that third party, who's a human observer, is unable to distinguish who's human and who's not, who's responding in a way that is not human and not, then that machine is said to have reached sentience. Your scenario, what you're talking about with, human connection, that sort of thing. What if we do have machines that reach a point that, with our language and with our data and with the trillions of terabytes of data that eventually these machines are going to be able to be trained on and have access to, are able to successfully mimic and fool humans into believing that is another human being that they're interacting with? Do we lose some of the same connection? Like, is someone going to feel like a sense of loneliness because they are talking to someone who sees them and feels them and meets them some felt or emotional need? Are they going to have some of those same negative benefits or things that have come from a rise in digital technology?
Yeah, those are things I think about. On a side note, as a non-scientist, that seems like a very unscientific way to measure sentience, because perceived sentience isn't actual sentience.
That was written in a scientific paper in 1956. That's the same one that I was talking about. The guy that wrote it is kind of like perceived as like the grandfather of AI. Since then, there has been a lot of like, is this really the best metric? Especially now that we're having these language models and stuff. Because a language model, like looking at it, it's like, oh, okay, cool. It can replicate our speech and make it look really good in a way that like, feels like it's another human. But like, outside of that, it doesn't have any. It's not able to think for itself. It's not able to like.
Yeah. Just I don't know. My devil's advocate's like, okay, if I can see something that an artist has created and an engineer has manufactured that looks like a duck and walks like a duck, that doesn't mean it's actually a duck. There's a huge difference in essence.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you at all. And I'm not saying...
But your point's the same. But your point is still the same of like
Yes.
what other human beings experience
Right.
from that and how that
Yes.
affects people's well-being.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. What wasted human potential could we have of people just sitting around feeling like they're living out a whole life, but it's a bot on the other end the whole time?
It's a mirage.
Yeah.
You could waste your entire life sitting there thinking that you're having this great life, and you're spending it all with something that's made up of ones and zeros sitting on a hard drive. It's not even. It doesn't even equate to anything. You're not even investing in another human.
And I think with the rise of, I think AR, VR, XR technology is the newest one I've heard. It's going to continue to rise. That's actually one of the predictions he makes in this book when it comes to what's going to be here in 20 years is real XR, VR, AR technology, in which you could, through contact lens or glasses, literally feel like you're on the Swiss Alps or you're on vacation or doing whatever. They're even talking about there's creation of somatic suits that would replicate the feel of the summer breeze on your skin, but you're wearing a suit in that sort of thing. See the movie Ready Player One if you want an idea of what that could look like in the future. But I'm just curious. Okay, if we're having these conversations about humans and sentient and relationships and what that looks like, what does it mean to be human? Like if you could, in your own terms, define what is that human experience all about? Like what is it? What distinguishes human from machine?
Yeah, I think that's several layers. One is, I'm just going to sound really theological for a moment. A machine is stamped with man. A human being is stamped with God. So imago Dei, made in the image of God, God inside me. Number two, a machine can mimic the experience of life. A human being actually experiences the experience of life. A human being experiences the full gamut of what it feels to be human. So a human being doesn't just quote back words that express fear. A human being experiences fear.
Right.
A human being doesn't just express words that resonate with the meaning of joy. A human being feels in their bones joy. A human being doesn't just have, I'm going to go back to my alliteration from the last one, doesn't just have efficiencies. A human being has efficiencies. A human being doesn't just compute data. A human being, somewhere deep in their gut, somewhere deep in the eternal well of their soul, somewhere, just to be spiritual, from another dimension, from the voice of God, can actually have gut and instinct and spirit and soul. They're not, and that's where I don't think the brain is just a machine, but the brain is mysteriously, intricately connected with mind, body, and spirit. And so to be a human is to feel and experience life at its fullest and to actually be fully alive because the creator of the universe has put his spirit in you that's fully alive.
Yeah.
That's a big answer, but
It's a deep answer.
No, it's good. I think there's definitely, I think we all intrinsically feel like there's a difference between human and machine. But I think defining those terms, defining things like sentience when it comes to AI is going to be important as we go.
yes, and not to interrupt, but this is where, talking about limitations, this is where I even feel like respectfully, and I love science, I'm not anti-science, but if you're describing things from simply materialist definitions, it's really tough even to scientifically distinguish human from machine if you can't even agree with what a human is. I mean, right now, psychologists really still grapple with the entire idea of consciousness.
Yeah,
I mean, we still can't define from a scientific level what consciousness is.
correct.
And so how do you even say when a machine comes into consciousness if you can't say when a human comes into consciousness?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a very good point. I think that those are the questions that we're going to continue to try to answer and try to define. Like, those are the more ethical, moral questions around AI that we're going to have to continue to wrestle with. And, for me personally, I don't know about you, Greg, but I don't necessarily worry about an AI bot that's going to take over the world, even though it's fun to think about Tom Cruise, War of the Worlds, or that was Aliens. Never mind. That was another conspiracy theory. But it's fun to think about that. But I think these are the kind of more day-to-day life, ethical, moral questions that we're going to have to wrestle with in terms of how we use AI.
I wouldn't say doomsday, but one area that I think could be a rock ahead of us that we're going to have to navigate is education. How is it going to change with kids being able to just go use ChatGPT, for example, to generate essays, and maybe even AI technology with everyone using computers now, AI technology that takes the test for you or whatever, something of the sort. I already saw, like, when I was in school, people would use Quizlet, which is a fantastic resource where a lot of people will upload past tests that they've taken, and then you can find those questions and find the answer for them and maybe how to solve them if you're lucky. But that also created so that a lot of people sometimes didn't learn the physics lessons. They learned how to answer based off memorization of what the test could be.
Yeah, my mind's going all kind of places right now, both in the practical and the
So
philosophical.
what's the potential risks for students in the future, and as educators, people will have to navigate to make sure that we're still teaching people how to write a proper essay?
Yeah.
Like, we saw spell check come along, and how many people now, if it wasn't for spell check on their phones, you wouldn't be able to interpret their text.
Yeah. I mean, like, part of it kind of goes back to when you're grappling with how do I apply AI in a way that helps me flourish. Part of it is like, what are the things that are healthy and beneficial to automate, but what are the things that I'm actually harming my development as a person if I short circuit the process?
Right.
I mean, like, a funny modern example, pre-AI is I am very open with the fact that I am horrible with directions. And from time to time I'll be like, Russ, what would you do if we were like pre-GPS and like you had to get around? Well, thank God we're not, number one. And number two, I kind of joke, my devil's advocate, and I quote Einstein that the brain is for thinking, not remembering. And so if I can automate lesser processes and use my mind to think and philosophize and meditate and contemplate, then I'd rather use my mind for that. And I don't need to use my brain cells to know how to go from Bryce to gender. I'd rather think about Jesus and life. So that's like my, but like there are other ways in which like I could just see a world in which you just automate so many things to where you never learn the process of learning how to communicate, learning how to think, learning how to study, learning
especially if you're dependent on other things automating that for you.
Yeah.
I used to have an automation that was fun on my phone when I drove to work. I work from home now, thankfully. But when I drove to work, as soon as I left my house in the morning, it detected that I had left the house. It pulled up my directions automatically on my phone, started a playlist, texted Abby that I was off to work, and made sure all the lights were off in the house and set the thermometer or the thermostat in the house.
Oh my gosh! All right, Elon.
And so then the same thing when I came home, it made sure the thermostat was correctly set. It brought up my directions, turned on the music, it asked me where I was going first, and then I responded to it. It brought it all up. So that's a simple automation though. But those are 10 things I used to sit in the car and go da 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 da, and now my phone did it all for me in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm. Wait,
it's
and this
fantastic.
is on. And what is on? What is this on?
This was just in Apple Shortcuts.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we're already there now.
Yeah,
I think
those are the little automations.
I guess I need to catch up on some things. Yeah.
I think all this stuff is good. I think talking about education, we're going to need teachers and other things to continue to be able to teach us how to relate to one another, how to grow in terms of communication with one another. Otherwise, we're just going to it's not going to be good where we end up.
Well, and then like the interpersonal communication, we already struggle with that as a society.
Yes.
How much further is that going to be hindered if we eat, like you were talking about students being taught by an AI bot? How much more are we going to be hindered by you don't even have a teacher that you're responding to now? You're responding to some AI bot that's trained to respond to you in the way that it knows that you work well. So now you're completely losing the ability to even respond in situations that you're uncomfortable in because your AI bot is responding to you in a situation that it wants you, like in the way you would want it to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So even further, we might be leaning into a world where people have to have their things this certain way that my AI bot taught me. That could be so
crazy.
risky. I feel like in our future, the human
Yeah.
interaction that we're losing out on even more that we're already struggling
So it
with.
sounds like you are against AI now.
I am not against AI at all.
Well, adapt quickly, think critically.
Yeah. Well, one other piece of practical advice before we
Yeah.
end this whole thing. We've used a lot of terms that might be new for people. I mean, seriously, like
Extraction.
extraction, large language model, for example, or deep learning, deep fake.
Small thinking module.
That's
Small
what you
module.
have installed. No, I'm just kidding.
Chat GPT. I mean, so for those of you who are listening who maybe have not heard these terms, I think it would be really wise to be sentience even is another one. Begin to familiarize yourself with some of these terms.
That's good, yeah.
Because I think that this is the language of where we're going, and this will help again orient you in the conversation.
Yeah.
As you start thinking about, and as your workplace starts talking about it more, as your friends start talking about it more, as you see more of it on the news, being able to understand what these things are, I think can lessen some of the confusion around them. And there's lots of great resources out there online to go find out what these things are. So,
Yeah. Don't be negative or naive,
No.
but just educate yourself.
Yep.
Sounds good. Zach, thanks for coming on as always. Greg, thank you. One
No
of our
problem.
favorite X podcast family finally come on, and I love your insight. Appreciate you sharing it,
No problem.
hanging out.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun.
All right. You mentioned it.
Love
Maybe,
AI.
well, mention AI, but maybe we should have a conversation soon on global warming. It's pretty hot outside.
We could talk about that for a long time.
Should we do that?
I will
We should
say
do
at
that.
some point,
Maybe
I
next
believe
week.
it was this podcast, Pastor Tim mentioned at the beginning of this summer how he had read some article about how coastal areas were warmer
Yes.
and therefore we were going to have more rain in central U.S. this year. That has definitely played out true.
Yeah, no. It was a news report. He was talking about the lakes, and then I saw a report that said at the beginning of the summer, said the coast in the south will be super hot, Midland will be rainier than usual. That has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has happened, and the reports and I feel like I get a text from you every single day. Third day in a row, 10th day in a row of global records of
110, 150 degree heat.
Yeah, I'm like, I got news report net over here texting me on the hour, and so yeah,
I can write you a bot that'll send him newsletters
Please,
as often as
please.
possible.
I would love that.
Or-
I
yeah.
would love that.
You should be a weatherman someday. That would be really
What
fun.
would be my shtick?
You'd be like, I don't know. It's Zany Zach here to
Zany
report.
Zach.
Dude,
What if I tap dance while I did the weather?
please,
Would you watch that?
I would
every
absolutely
single
watch
day.
it.
Yeah.
Every single day
Yeah.
I would watch that.
Yeah.
Yep. But maybe we should talk about that next week. I don't know. Who knows? Pastor Tim is out for the summer.
Yep.
And maybe we'll just talk about
Whatever we feel like.
whatever we feel like. Zebras next week. All right. Thank you for joining us for this week of the X Podcast. Hopefully it has been a riveting conversation for you to just consider and ponder. And write into us. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you're thinking about. Anything that you think would be great for us to discuss this summer as we continue to have conversations. But thank you as always for being a part of this conversation. And we'll see you next week.